needed you, they knew where to come looking for you. They'd grab you under this shelter. I think there was a chip shop. There was a chip shop there as well. Billy something had a chip shop there. Used to do fantastic chips. And I think now it's an hairdresser's, or part of it's an hairdresser's anyway. But the pub, there was the coaching house, the Cambridge. Wasn't the bridge then, it was the Cambridge. And you had we used to call it the Packet House, which I think is reverted back to that name now. But it was the Admiral Lord Nelson when I was of drinking age, and that was, and used to flip between the three. So you'd have your setup. The Cambridge was always known as like an old man's pub. You wouldn't go there because that's where all the oldies used to go. But if you did go there, you knew you could get a good cheap pint. So you'd fill up with a few there. Then you go to the coaching house in the village. You'd have a few in there. And then you'd make your way over to the Nelson because you knew you could have a stay behind there. So you'd have your stay behind, and many a time your milkman would call in and have a cup of tea while you're finishing your pints off, you know. And I think what else was there? There was a chip shop there, so you used to get your chips from there as well.
Did they have a Tesco on the main street there?
No.
No.
It used to be in fact, that at one point used to be a cinema years ago. That's where the convenience store is now. That used to be the Tesco Express. That used to be a cinema.
Right. And
the only reason that Tesco put that shop there was so they could get a toehold into Burscough. So when they built the big Tesco superstore there now, which used to be a factory, so it actually went from making something to just selling imported carrots. You know, that was always the thing, because that was Triangle Controls. And there was actually about 15 different businesses on there. And I was remember there, because you could have at weekends you could go around there with your bikes because they had a ramp. So you could go up on the ramp and jump off the ramp, and there's always old cars around there you could play on and that. But there's about 15 businesses there. One of the famous ones was Harry Evans, the sprayer. He was when he actually was served notice to leave because they were going to turn it into Tesco's. I think that was it. The business just folded.
Yeah.
His sons went working for somebody, so they went from being an employer to being a non-employer. You know, and then they knocked it down, but built the Tesco's. But they wanted to buy the houses that were there to knock them down to build a petrol station. But that's been, as far as I know, that's been knocked in the head many times now. But they only built this Tesco Express so they could actually say to council, well, we're already in Burscough. You know, as soon as that Tesco had opened, that place was shut. But people complained, and I think because the complaints were so bad, they actually kept it open and they call what it is now. I can't remember what it's called now.
It's not a co-op, is it?
No, it's like a co-op type of shop, but it's called something different. But I think at the bottom of it, it's Tesco. You know, it's actually a subsidiary down the line of Tesco, because there was so much complaints in there. But there used to be a good off licence in Burscough, Threshers. That used to be very popular. That was the only place you could get a drink if the pub was shut. So you couldn't go to Tesco's, and you couldn't get your drink in the shops. You'd either went to the pub where the landlady knew you, and she knew you if you were over 18, and she knew whose child you were. You know, don't be silly. You know, I'll tell your dad next time he's in. Or if you'd had too much to drink, they'd refuse to serve you. So it was a way of controlling people's drink, because they said, well, I'm not serving you, you've had too much. But you can only get it in the off licence. You know, and again, the off licence, the lady in there knew who you were. But it was the only place you could get a drink after hours. If you didn't go to the pub, you know. There wasn't none of this 10p a can from Tesco's, you know.
Yeah. What do you remember of public transport? Did you use the trains and buses and whatever else?
Yeah, I remember the buses used to run regular, Ribble. They were the red Ribble buses, and they used to run regular to between Ormskirk and that. We used to catch they used to do, I think it's still there, the Liverpool Blackpool Express, which run every hour, and then there was a bus I think every on the half hour that used to come from Ormskirk, and it would run through into do the routes into Burscough, around Burscough and back, and then you had your trains. You could actually catch a train from to Burscough to Southport. Then you'd have your Burscough junction where you get the train to Liverpool, and but they used to have the curves in the, and it was always a, if I remember rightly, if any older person would tell you the sad day when they ripped the curves up. They couldn't see why, because you could get a train from Southport to Liverpool via Burscough. You can't, or from Southport to Preston via. You can't do that now. You know, it's impossible to, you know, to do that now. You know, you'd have to. It always involves a change, which I think was a bit short-sighted. But there you go. And then they had the army depot. Remember the army depot being there? That was a big employ. It was the army depot until they shut it. You know, it was a massive employ. I think there was probably 200 or 300 people at one time employed there.
Right. It's a big site, that, isn't it? Because they built houses on it now.
Built houses, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the
Heathfields, they call
Heathfields.
it.
They were supposed to build a mixture of high quality and low affordable housing. They were going to put a shop on there and a pub on there, and they were also going to put something for the infrastructure, maybe a doctor's surgery, and then once they got the plans come through, it was, well, we can't really put the pub on here now. Oh, but the shops will have to go as well. So they ended up building all houses, and none of them or a very small number of them are actually affordable. So that you find that the people from Burscough don't live in them houses. They've attracted people from Scammelsdale and Liverpool and from Preston. There's very few people. You used to know who was Burscough. You'd know them. You could tell who was from Burscough. And now it's you get a lot of people just moving in. So the area's been, I think it's been changed. You know, I think certainly the way you speak's been changed. You know, you've gone more like Burscough Scouse now than Burscough Lancashire.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's a good example. Mark Lane, they built a block of flats there, and Ideal thought, well, I'll go and see about buying one of them or even renting one of them. So I got the number off the side. It was some housing trust. It was this when the Conservative government were promoting private enterprise to build these houses, and then, you know, in place of building council houses. So he went and got one, phoned up about it, and they'd all been taken, and there was not one single person from Burscough in there. And when you actually talked to anyone there, they were from Liverpool, from Scammelsdale, from Wigan. They were from anywhere but Burscough. So how did people living in them areas get to know about houses going on the canal side in Burscough?
Yeah.
That question has never been answered for me. Never. But any housing that's built up in Burscough now, it's usually snapped up by outsiders, from want of a better word.
Yeah. What do you think of the wharf?
Well, fantastic. Been after that for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
I think when the British Waterways had it, and there was a yard, and I can remember they were actually using that yard for things, horses. They used to keep horses in there and that, and then they stopped using it. And we used to go to a boxing club there above that, and they stopped using that, went into disarray. And then it was just left to go, and people were saying, look, Burscough needs some heritage. Because what people don't realise is Burscough's not just a small village, or it was not insignificant. There was reasons why Burscough existed, and one of the reasons was the canal, and the fact that you could get it was low lying the ground, so you could get the night soil on and night soil off. It was also easy to load produce around. You had the rail line running through next to the canal. You got the other rail line coming from Liverpool, from Preston and Liverpool, so it's intersecting. You had the depot built there during the First World War. So it's not just a small town. There's actually a lot of history in Burscough, you know, when people can, and so they needed somewhere to sort of chart that history, the history of the canal. I mean, that canal that leads Liverpool to, I think, to me, it should be one of the heritage. It should be on a World Heritage Site because of the importance of it. You know, and who built it? The navvies. I mean, talk about navvies and people go, who? They don't know who they are, and yet they built the canals. You know, and they were treated as if they were aliens. They wouldn't let them in towns. They wouldn't. They used to pay them in tokens so they couldn't get drunk and ravage the place. But it's always been wanted somewhere to have an heritage site where you could chart the history of the canal. You could do things like Cedar Farm at Bispham and Maudsley area. You needed something like that in Burscough because of the canal. And I think if it's treated right and promoted right, it'll do well. But if you start filling it full of trinkets and that, and it just becomes then just a curiosity, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, the other thing about shops around that area is the rents. I don't know how much they are charging people to rent. Yeah.
Dear.
So they've got to make a living at it, or else they're just going to go.
Just going to go. Yeah. If it's supported right, and that, it'll do well. But if it's not, people will rent it, or the rents will be so high you'll end up with empty shops, and then it'll go. See, one of the ideas behind Tesco was that people would come and do the shopping. That was the council's line. People would come and shop in the Tesco park, and then leave the shopping in the car and walk from Burscough, which never seems to happen because the car park at Tesco was never empty. But you never see Burscough full. On a Sunday it can be empty, yet the car park can be full. And then the council did actually mute charging. They were going to put the car parks in Burscough and put a charge on them, until someone pointed out, well, you could park for free in Tesco. So you'd end up with empty car parks. Because why pay when you could go and park in Tesco's? And that's another way of killing off your village. People, I'm not paying this, drive on. But there's now actually somewhere for people to leave the shopping in the car park and walk into the wharf. But it needs promoting, you need to keep it promoted. And you need to keep putting things on, that are interesting people.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been there a couple of times. I find it's nice. A lot of people bring their families there now.
Yeah.
They'll have picnics there, and the idea of that fella renting out the barges for a day, that's another good idea. Because people can. It's another use for the canal. And it could be a good thing. But we'll see what 5 years down the line brings.
Yeah. Where did you used to go on holiday?
Cornwall.
When you were little?
Cornwall and Cornwall or Skegness, Lincolnshire. And my dad, being a wagon driver, he was very reluctant to actually drive. It was like a busman's holiday for him. Yeah. But we used to go to Cornwall was the big one, because the motorway used to finish at Exeter, and then it was all single or dual carriageway, and then over to Lincolnshire. But occasionally we went to Wales, but not very often.
Yeah.
And then when we left school, I left school 77. I think package holidays abroad were starting to be promoted through Danair Airlines. Right. So mum and dad started going to Spain then.
Yeah. They
could afford it because they didn't have to pay for all the lads then. They only had to take a couple of kids with them.
Right. I've just about come to the end of what I want to ask you. We have a reading here that we give to everybody, so if you wouldn't mind reading it out loud, I'll give it to you. I'm sure there's lots of other things that we can talk about, but maybe it's another date. It's just what's on the back of there.
Do you want me to read what's in here? Yeah.
Just read it, yeah.
The northwest of England has many interesting dialects, although some people have no idea about all the differences. If someone from the south saw an episode of Emmerdale on the television, they might think all the actors came from Yorkshire. After all, that is where the programme comes from. But that's not the case, as at least 3 come from Lancashire. The production company looks for actors who sound northern. Maybe they think that with luck, no one will notice. Apparently Lancashire folk make good singers too, because their accent is musical. I have to say that it wouldn't take many fingers to count how many good singers I know. Accents have changed a lot over time. When I was little and sitting on a chair doing nothing, my father would always say, "Stir this and put kettle on." And if I moaned that I had hadn't grown enough, I would be told to put horse muck in my boots. Heard that one. There are many expressions that have disappeared, along with the old houses, mills and the factories that have been pulled down and turned into flats and car parks. Perhaps the television has brought some problems. We are used to listening to all sorts of accents, but really broad ones are rare. We are moving around more as well. 80 years ago, most people would stay in the same place all their lives, but now it's unusual to change. It isn't unusual to change jobs and houses several times. Travel is cheap too. Many years ago, it took months and months of saving to pay for a holiday, but now it costs buttons to go quite a long distance, which might be a curse for those of us who like to stay at home. You only have to look at all the holiday adverts to see that purses must be deep to afford the prices. Given a choice, some people might want to get rid of their accent. They think it is likely to count against them when faced with a job interview and is somehow not quite nice. But most of us are proud of accents and don't want it to disappear forever, leaving everyone speaking exactly the same.
Thanks very much indeed for talking to us today.
It's right, that expression.